the person we're honoring today talked about the most pressing and urgent question before us is, what are we doing for others? So think of it, there's a theme there. Service to others, right? Others before ourselves, right? If you're playing sports, team more than the individual, right? That's how you win games. It's service, that's what we're here for. How can we make other people's lives better? If you get up one day and just do one thing that makes somebody's life better, you've had a good day, right? That's a pretty good day for everybody. And Martin Luther King certainly gave us a lot of those days and lots of things to live by. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Senator Fazio. I did see him, there he is, for a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the First Selectman for hosting this. It's great to see so many wonderful faces on a very important occasion. I think that Martin Luther King Day is an important occasion, as the First Selectman said, to reflect on many parts of American history, of the sins of America's past, of the fallen nature of humanity. All people make mistakes, but also of the great character, fundamentally, of this country and the great promise that it has and should have for all people. Martin Luther King was a great figure in multiple traditions. He was a Christian preacher, and he was also a great American civil rights leader, and he evoked both traditions in order to achieve progress for all Americans, more equal treatment for all Americans. He said, he constantly evoked the golden rule in his speeches and in his writings: treat others the way you would want to be treated. Just as many have said in American history while fighting for civil rights, just as I would not be a subject, so I should never be a ruler of other men. People should be treated equally because we were all created in the loving image of God. That's what all faith traditions recognize: Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions from the Old Testament. And it was from that religious tradition that Martin Luther King was able to persuade so many Americans that subjugation and oppression and inequality under law in American society, especially in certain American states, was not justifiable. He also evoked great American traditions. His most famous speech, the I Have a Dream speech, was very poignantly and very specifically given 100 years in the aftermath of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was when we freed the slaves during the Civil War. And it was specifically given in the shadows of the Lincoln Memorial. Abraham Lincoln bears a lot of, the 16th president bears a lot of similarities to Martin Luther King. He took on a great burden of the sins that were part of American society and gave of himself, including ultimately his life, so that America could be a better place for all people and to help erase many of the injustices, especially against Black Americans. So he spoke to the American tradition. He spoke to the Declaration of Independence. He spoke to the promissory note in his I Have a Dream speech. America made a promise to all people that they should be treated equally and free to pursue their own sense of happiness in life. And until that point that all Americans could realize those rights and those freedoms, America was not being its true self. It was not being true to its best character. So we have a lot to reflect on Martin Luther King Day, about where our country has come from, where it's at now, and where it could go in the future. And so it's important to remember the past so we know where we are going. And that is, I think, an important lesson to remember on Martin Luther King Day. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you, Ryan. Janet Stone McGuigan, our select person.
Thank you, First Selectman Camillo. I'm Janet Stone McGuigan. I serve on your Board of Selectmen, but you can call me Mrs. McGuigan. That's what my son's friends call me. So I want to start by saying good morning Happy New Year and happy birthday, Martin Luther King Jr. One sad note and two happy notes. When this day was recognized by the federal government to honor Martin Luther King, it was meant to be a day of service to honor his wishes. I just read recently, only 25% of Americans 16 and older volunteer. To me, that's really sad. But we are so lucky in Greenwich. We have a really vibrant community who are very willing to step up. We have 22 volunteer boards and commissions and committees in town that do an awful lot of work in town government. So we are really fortunate. We defy that statistic. When my boys were young, in school, and we lived in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania for a few years, I was asked to organize their school's day of service on this holiday. And I have to tell you, no one complained. No one said, hey, we want to go skiing, we have a day off, let's have fun on this snowy day. Everyone had fun. We came together as a community. We did things that were helpful. But really what we learned at the end of the day is you are rich. When you can give to others, it means you are wealthy. You never have to wonder, what is my purpose in life? To give others is really an enriching blessing. So I hope you take inspiration from that. And again, thank you, Martin Luther King Jr., and happy birthday.
Thank you very much. You can see that theme, service above self, right? You're seeing it in all the speeches. Quickly, before we turn it over to some honored guests, I see David Rabin from United Way is here, Mayor Lee Kiernan from the YWCA is here, former Representative Libby Florin walked in, and we have tax collector Heather Smiglio in the back, and town clerk Jackie Buckins, and Deputy Chief Gray's in the back, Deputy Chief Zuccarella. Thank you all. I'm probably missing a bunch of people, but of course, Chief Evie. I would have heard about that in about 20 minutes. Anyway, so we will start it off. Who wants to lead off? Our guest from Old Greenwich School.
Hi, I'm Cole Chu from OGS, here to talk about Martin Luther King, a monumental leader that broke the wall of segregation. A couple of things amazed me and moved me about how Martin Luther King was such a kind-spirited person. Firstly, Martin Luther King fought for justice in peaceful, nonviolent ways, such as the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted 381 days. When black people walked to their jobs in school, the bus company suffered greatly because the majority of people who rode the bus were black people. Eventually, the bus company had to give in and change the rules about the bus seating. This was a monumental day for the black people. Secondly, he treated every person he met very respectfully. The color of their skin was not something he considered, even if it was the person against him, even if it was the person who bombed his house. He never fought with his fists, but only with his powerful words. As he treated everyone with the utmost respect, he mentioned in his I Have a Dream speech, where 250,000 people came to see his speech, he said this: I have a dream that my 4 little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lucas. I'm a 5th grader from OG, and I'm here to talk about what Martin Luther King means to me. Without Martin Luther King, I might not have met some of my friends because I'd probably be in a different school. If not for Martin Luther King and his character of not giving up what he believed in, even though it was really hard to do this. He even went to jail 7 times while going through the process of giving blacks more rights. Martin Luther King's speeches were filled with strong emotion. People listened to him because he included his family and his kids were very important to him. In his I Have a Dream on the Lincoln Memorial speech, he said this: "I have a dream that someday little black boys and girls will join hands as brothers and sisters."
Hi, I'm Kellen O'Connor from 5th grade at OG.
And I'm Kylie Rich from 5th grade at OG.
And I studied U.S. Civil Rights Supreme Court cases for our unit on civil rights in school. And the cases that I studied tied into Martin Luther King. The first case that I studied, Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, held that separate was fair as long as the conditions were equal. And Martin Luther King lived with this law, and he fought the segregation with sit-ins, marches, boycotts in the courts in Alabama. And Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 overturned the Plessy ruling, and Martin Luther King's quotes and words were also used in the arguments for the case. Thank you.
For the Civil Rights Unit, I studied Ruby Bridges and how MLK paved the way for her to attend an all-white school and do things that she did later in life. Ruby Bridges was born in 1954, and that was when Brown v. Board of Ed was in effect. That paved the way for her to attend an all-white school. But parents withdrew their children, and Ruby's family was threatened. But following in MLK's footsteps, Ruby acted with courage and bravery as she entered the school. She stood up for what she believed in and inspired many people, which is what I want to do in my life. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sean Williamson from ODS. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech was one of the biggest marches that Dr. King was responsible for. 250,000 people participated in the march. The march had a huge impact on the equality of races. Civil Rights Act gave blacks more rights. Martin Luther King could have stayed home, given up, but he didn't because he wanted for himself and other people to have the same rights as other Americans. It helps me think about not giving up because what you could do not only benefit you, but your family, friends, and teammates. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Austin Barandowski from OG, and I'm here to say a few things about what I like about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech encouraged more people to turn against segregation. Maybe segregation would still exist without the speech. Also, I would have not have met some of the people who were in my life. I could have been a totally different person. Another major part was his nonviolent protest. They are also a big part in the civil rights movement because neutral to segregation people might have been encouraged to agree with segregation if there was violence. Thank you.
That was terrific. Thank you so much, special guests. And before we go further, I'm looking around, and Demetria Nelson, our head of Department of Human Services here, thank you so much for being here. And even Uncle Sam showed up, wherever, there he is. Martin Luther King, in addition to promoting service above self, was also a voice for those who didn't have one, the disenfranchised. And that included not only people, but animals, right? He was the animal welfare rights advocate. So let's remember that, speaking up for people who don't have a voice, that's our job, right? Those of us who can speak. And someone who's done that for many, many years here in town is my friend Reverend Thomas Nins. And he's been there for all of us, no matter where we are in town. He never says no to stand up and come and talk to people and help us out. He always answers calls. And he's also a New York Yankee fan, so he goes right to the top of the list. So without much ado, my friend, Reverend Thomas Nins.
Good morning. So when our selectman asked if I could do this, I asked him what the theme was. This was back when it was going to be on the other day. He said, just talk about what King means to you personally. And I said, okay, I can do that. I want to start by saying my home was just like thousands of people's homes in the United States of America in communities that looked like my community. There were 3 pictures on the wall in my home: John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. If you went to any church in any community that looked like mine at that time, and even today, they hand out these fans. On one side of the fan was the picture of whatever funeral home was providing the fan, and on the other side was a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. I was inundated with images of Martin Luther King Jr., even if I didn't fully understand all that was going on. I knew that he was somebody. There were 2 marches in order to bring Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday to become a national holiday. One was in the winter, one was in the summer. I was at both of those marches, standing up for the right to have him recognized as that important to America, that his birthday would be a national holiday. And obviously, I feel a sense of connection to the celebration. I am honored that our town, under your leadership, has decided to do this. Yeah. Those of you from way back, and I mean farther back than the last 5 years of being in town, will remember that we used to do an MLK celebration at Christ Church. And after the celebration at Christ Church, we would walk across the street, sometimes dangerously, and go to the YW, where the YW would have art exhibits and musicians and the greatest sandwiches I think I've ever had. I said all that to say that the town is not a stranger to recognizing and celebrating what is important, and the town is not a stranger to recognizing and celebrating what is relevant for all of us. These young people rocked it. They rocked it. Let's give them another hand. I was so impressed by what you did. That was really something. That was really something. And you made my speech about 15 minutes shorter. So I have to apologize for, looking like I just left the last episode of MASH, but I was in a bad accident. And I'm still recovering from that accident. But trust me, this is a lot better than where I was. So let me ask you young people a question. It's important because I want to make sure you get some of this. You're not going to catch all of it. I want to make sure that, by the way, did you know that this teacher was the teacher of my children? So how young is she? I remember. And I know you remember them. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Woo! So here's the question for you guys. You guys all know what music is, yes? Yep? Talk to me. You know what music is? Yes. Have you ever heard of something called jazz music? Yes. Okay. So you're going to hear me reference jazz in this speech. And the question will be, what does jazz have to do with Martin Luther King Jr.? Now, don't answer, because the grown-ups don't know. No, I know you want to answer. I feel that vibe. So I just want to make sure that you know what I'm about to talk about and can make sense of some of it. Grown-ups, you just follow their lead. Why jazz? And what does jazz have to do with Martin Luther King Jr.? Jazz is one of the greatest musical forms of artistic expression ever created. It is the combination of multiple musical thoughts, themes, and tempos blended together into an original score. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was to social justice and human rights what jazz is to music. Some believe the movement for civil rights began with King, and we can understand that because he gets all the publicity. While it took a unique form of expression under his leadership, many are the individuals and organizations who had been in the struggle long before him. Frederick Douglass and the abolitionists had been in the struggle. Historic black colleges, universities, and Greek organizations had been in the struggle long before King. The NAACP, the National Baptist Convention, and Southern Christian Leadership Conference had already been active in the struggle prior to King taking the lead. What King did with this responsibility, however, set him apart. He took what already existed and combined components of those tactics and commitments, and he forged them into something new and undeniable, just like jazz. People had already prayed, but prayer and singing alone were not enough to move a nation. People had already protested and demanded liberation, but outrage was not enough to change legislation. King took all these moving parts, these individual instruments, if you will, and he brought them together, incorporating the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi and Jesus. He merged them together. He welcomed Jews and Gentiles, men and women, and yes, blacks and whites. And to your point, Fred, there might have been a couple German shepherds there as well. He brought them together and created a new musical score for America. The score he created called for the civil rights and individual dignity of all people. That score ushered in a new understanding of morality in high places. That score, the one arranged by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., created a new style and a new sound for the world that has been the bedrock of almost every group who has sought to win their emancipation in this nation. They used the elements of the civil rights movement. King was the Duke Ellington of civil rights and the drum major for social justice. And you and I, the beneficiaries of that struggle, and I like that 2 of you said, had it not been for that, you may not have known the people that you know now. And you might, that was so profound. That was deep. And that took 15 minutes off the speech. You and I, the beneficiaries of that struggle, we're the new stewards of that new sound in a developing nation, and we are still a developing nation. We are the ones to continue to dream and hold up the light so that the forces of darkness can never achieve oppressive power again. We, you and I, are both guardians and caretakers of the beloved community that King created. Look to your left, look to your right. You are members of the beloved community that King created. And then came a moment where King got reflective, and he knew that there was a strong possibility that he may not be around to see all of the dreams fulfilled. He knew that there may come a time when he wasn't there to hear the song completely played out. And he started to think about that. And this is what he said. He said, every now and then, I ask myself, what is it that I would want said about me when I'm gone? He said, tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. If someone's going to talk about me while I'm gone, said King, I'd like somebody to mention that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I tried to feed the hungry. And I want you to be able to say that day that I tried to clothe those who were naked and visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. If you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for peace. Say that I was a drum major for justice. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. He said, I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can help somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody who's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian ought, if I can bring salvation to a world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. My friends, members of this community, may our living not be in vain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Nins. That was beautiful, and certainly we'll take that with us, as we will your words. So now we will end it with a couple of songs by our great friend Ruby Durant, and leave on a high note, and take our experiences today with us throughout today and all the other days. So Ruby, it's all yours.
I'm just glad to be here today, because I was one of those kids, like Pastor Nen says, that were affected when Martin Luther King passed away. And I was about 15 years old. But we were all members of the struggle. And I remember what most struck me was that he said that even if you're a garbage man, be the best garbage man and be a friend to each other and hold hands with each other, whatever race you are. Do unto others. So today, which I'm so glad to be here, again, I'm going to sing, and maybe you can help me out. My Country, 'Tis of Thee. And then I'm going to end it with James Weldon Johnson's Lift Every Voice and Sing. Join me if you may, if you know the song. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Excellent. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Again, thank you so much for being part of this inaugural ceremony. Let's do this again next year, right? Hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer. But thank you again so much. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. God bless.